Spain going downhill, muscling it up, but off. And Paul George able to keep it in play, and Paul George hurt himself.
Joel Embiid took a fall during the pregame warm-ups before their Christmas Day matchup versus the Boston Celtics.
Embiid said he would most likely need surgery and a long recovery.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Elite Fantasy Sports with me, Mike Zakarian. We are in the NBA offseason for just about every single team except for a handful of them. So we're going to be leaning into that, starting to get ourselves ready for the 2025-2026 season. And we're going to do so by highlighting some of the more interesting teams as we head into the offseason. Some that might have some unexpected draft picks, some that might have some roster moves, some flex or some cap flexibility, and some teams that are poised to make some aggressive moves that'll get them ready to win, that will also help us get ready to win. And the team that we're going to start with, as already introduced to you by that intro video, is the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, the 76ers on paper this last offseason looked poised to make a run in the Eastern Conference. They acquired superstar Paul George. Maxey was starting to take the leap. Of course, a former MVP in Joel Embiid. They did some work around the edges with guys like Andre Drummond and Kelly Oubre. And then the poop was just thrown all over the fan. It went everywhere. They stopped winning games almost immediately without really ever making a threat at doing anything. But if we wanted to be fair and be a little glass half full, maybe just about everything that could go wrong did go wrong. So what we're going to do is kind of prep you for what their offseason looks like, what their roster could look like, and what kind of moves they'd be making heading into the next season. Because the one thing that's going for Philadelphia right now, besides Embiid, Paul George, and Maxey all being relatively rested, is that the rest of the Eastern Conference has turned into what some may call a dumpster fire. Now, believe it or not, the 76ers actually have the highest draft pick in the Eastern Conference, as number 1 is going to Dallas, number 2 to the Spurs, and then somehow Philly jumped all the way up to get to number 3. And then when you look at the landscape of the rest of the Eastern Conference, we don't know who Giannis Antetokounmpo is going to be playing for, but indications right now are pointing him staying in Milwaukee, which, yeah, of course, that's not great if you're a Sixers fan, but the rest of the Milwaukee team isn't looking too scary. You have Cleveland on a second round bounce out. The Celtics, who lost their all-NBA star in Jason Tatum and now are under money watch as they're getting ready. Well, they have changed ownership and now getting ready to change roster to try to get under that second apron, so they're not paying hundreds of millions of dollars, not just on a roster, but also on the tax that comes with it. So the Sixers are kind of poised to make a little bit of a run. So let's take a peek at the roster that they have returning. We are then going to look at some potential trades. So, we've got Joel Embiid, who's going to be making $55 million a year this year. You've got Paul George, who's also $51 million. You got Maxey coming back. Oubre's on an expiring contract, which is a little bit interesting because he could get moved if they needed to. Drummond also on an expiring contract. Then you have the rookie, or now second-year player, Jared McCain, who looked like to be a front runner for Rookie of the Year before going down with an injury. You have Eric Gordon, Lonnie Walker, Jared Butler, Ricky Council, all on minimum deals. Some of those are coming off the books as expiring contract. Ricky Council, not the first, second, or third, but the fourth. Adem Big Bona, and then Justin Edwards, also a minimum deal, also an expiring contract. So that is what the roster is looking like heading in to the upcoming season. But we also, again, already mentioned, but they are taking home the 3rd overall pick. Now, there's some really fun things that you could do with the 3rd overall pick. We've heard Paul George already express his interest in the rookie Ace Bailey.
I think he has big time potential. He has big time talent. He can score from any spot on the floor. He has an isolation game, which you don't see that often in kids.
And Morey and the Sixers could just absolutely take Bailey, put him onto the roster, and then that kind of gives you an opportunity to win now with the roster you got, but also give you a young core in guys like Maxey, McCain, and now this 3rd overall pick, which again, we're assuming is Ace Bailey, at least for now. But they also have some other moves. We are going to go over to the NBA trade machine over on Spotrac, and we're going to try to see if we can get some fun deals. So let's start with the Sixers and the New Orleans Pelicans, and let's try to get rid of this third overall pick here. We're going to send that over to New Orleans. In return, New Orleans is going to send back over their first overall pick, or excuse me, their 7th overall pick, their first-round pick, and let's see what Herb Jones looks like right now. So currently, we're going to need to add some cold, hard cash here. So let's go back over to the Philly side. Let's see if we can add some sweet, sweet money over here to make this work. Now, what if we threw in somebody like Kelly Oubre? What does that get us to? That makes this trade successful. So New Orleans would have to waive a player, but right now, New Orleans would get Kelly Oubre at $8 million a deal, which I believe a player option he has, and then the 2025 first-round pick of the 76ers, which is pick number 3, and then the 76ers would get pick number 7 and Herb Jones. Now, this is an interesting one because I do think a player like Herb Jones could immediately impact Philly. One of the areas that they were a little bit weaker on was that wing defense, right? Because a lot was asked of Paul George, who was not, one, healthy enough to play, but also seems to have taken a little bit of a step back. This is not Paul George slander, but he's clearly not that A1 defender that he was at one point. And if you throw a defender out like that, that's only asked to make some open corner threes occasionally and just defend their best wing or perimeter player, I really do think that gives some cover when the Sixers are rolling guys out like Maxey and McCain. You now have Embiid anchoring with wings and Paul George and Herb Jones. I feel like that is something that could get some serious work done. Again, in the Eastern Conference, you don't have to do too much to all of a sudden make a big move. Now, let's try something else a little bit different here. Let's say New Orleans doesn't want to do this. Let's clear this. Let's try some new teams. We're going to go back to the 76ers again in this season, but we're also going to find our friends, the Brooklyn Nets. Brooklyn Nets, one of the few teams that have a ton of flexibility heading into this season, a bunch of different assets, a bunch of different cash available. So let's see. Let's take that 8th pick. We're going to take the same idea that we had in that most recent round, where we're going to get have them move back a little bit in the draft, and then we're going to add somebody like Cam Johnson over there. So we're going to send Cam Johnson in the 8th overall pick to Philly, where Philly, on the other hand, is going to send over their number 3 pick. Now, we're going to need some cash in order to make this one work as well. Kelly Oubre, I apologize, but it looks like you are going to be in that list. That's still not going to be enough money. We do have somebody like Andre Drummond, which I think would make it a little bit more interesting, but that's still not enough cash. But then you could throw in somebody not like Jared McCain. You could throw in somebody like Eric Gordon, which would be an expiring deal. You could also throw in somebody like Kyle Oubre, who can veto the trade, so that's probably not going to happen. You have Gershon Yabusele, excuse me. That could make a move, although this says I still don't think we have enough. So I wonder if somebody like Quentin Grimes is going to have to be included in this as well. That still puts us a little bit short, although the trade is successful. So in this scenario, Kelly Oubre, Andre Drummond, Quentin Grimes, and Eric Gordon and the pick for Cam Johnson and the 8th overall pick. Now, this is a lot of guys going out the door. However, one thing that I do think is interesting about this is somebody like Quentin Grimes might like Kelly Oubre. You're not too excited about Kelly Oubre, but that will be eventually an expiring contract. So will Andre Drummond, right? That's just 1 year left. So that money's going to come off the books. Eric Gordon, you're not too worried about it. And then it gets you somebody like Quentin Grimes along with the 3rd overall pick. I think that could be somewhat interesting. And again, it's giving you maybe not the same level of defender that Herb Jones is, but the elite shooting that Cameron Johnson brings, just continuing to stretch the floor, which makes Embiid that much more dangerous, even as he's getting a little bit older. Now, of course, Embiid's health is going to be the biggest question mark of all of this stuff. But I do think both of those scenarios in trading back are somewhat intriguing. Now, one of the problems Philadelphia is going to continue to run into, as you saw with a lot of the roster construction of the 76ers, they don't have a lot of those middling contracts, right? Their most expensive players are well in the 50s. Then you have Maxey. And then the other deals you have are some lower end ones, like a Quentin Grimes, who's only making $4+ million, Kelly Oubre, who's making around $8 million. And then it jumps up to like Maxey in the 30s. So it's really hard for some of those deals that I was somewhat excited to mess around with, like, say, how do we get John Collins from the Utah Jazz over to the 76ers, or even looking at somebody like Miles Bridges from the Charlotte Hornets, or even looking at We the North, the Toronto Raptors, and bringing RJ Barrett down. But unfortunately, because they don't have a lot of these mid-sized contracts or like, a little bit north of average, that they're unable to make a lot of these moves. So most likely what we're going to see is, I would think, Brooklyn and the New Orleans Pelicans twisting the knife just a little bit and not allowing that type of deal to happen for the 76ers like we were laying out with the Cameron Johnson or a Herb Jones along with the pick. I could see them asking to have some more sweeteners, whether that's pick swaps later on or another straight up first round pick. So it'll be very interesting to see how Philadelphia actually tackles this offseason. The other option that they have is to straight up blow it up and just go super young, right? Do you try to move off of a piece like a Paul George, who's making quite a bit of money, although I don't know what the market would be like for Paul George, or even Joel Embiid if you wanted to sell? I don't even know if it's selling high or selling low. But again, in the current structure of the NBA with this collective bargaining agreement, moving a $50 million salary is near impossible. But I do have one more trade that I want to throw out there that, again, I don't think either of these teams would actually do. But if you're trying to add a little bit of more depth without getting rid of your first round pick, but just moving back a little bit, let's take a peek at our friends down in Houston, the Houston Rockets. So in this trade, Houston would be sending over Tari Eason, Cam Whitmore, and then pick number 10. While the Houston Rockets would be acquiring Kelly Oubre Jr., Quentin Grimes, and then the 2025 number 3 pick. Now, I don't necessarily think Houston is trying to jump up to number 3, but I do think players like Quentin Grimes and Kelly Oubre Jr. are somewhat what the Rockets are looking for. They have plenty of defenders right now on that team, and not like that Quentin Grimes is a bad defender, but they are just looking for more shot getters. And what we saw from Quentin Grimes, again, some of that was injury related, but Quentin Grimes came in the second half of the season and just turned into a 21 points per game type score. And then same thing with Kelly Oubre Jr., who, again, I think he was being asked to do way too much for the 76ers, right? He was starting, he was playing like 35 minutes a game because nobody was healthy. But if Kelly Oubre on this Houston team is just asked to come off the bench and knock down some threes, be a bench scorer, I think that could be somewhat of a good fit. And then they also have the 3rd overall pick, and they could make another move at another guard type player, like somebody like an Ace Bailey. So I don't know if Philly is really going to be that aggressive. I think we're more likely to see them just draft Ace Bailey and then see how it fits. And then maybe as we get deeper into the NBA season, Philly's going to have a better opportunity to assess where they are at, if they are going to be a competitive team or not, and then decide, do we want to move off some of these pieces? Do we want to enhance some areas by moving off some of our young guys or not? But Philly's at this weird situation here where they've got a couple of very expensive guys. And then I don't want to say the famous phrase, the 2 timelines, but that is kind of what we're looking at right now with Embiid and Paul George. Their window is slowly closing, while on the other hand, Maxi's just entering his prime. McCain's only in year 2, and now the 3rd overall pick. So I don't envy being the Philadelphia 76ers, because you look at the landscape of the Eastern Conference and there is a real opportunity for them to not only make the playoffs next season, which would already be a big improvement for what they did last season, but it would also be in a position to maybe host a first round series again with the decline of the Boston Celtics, Miami Heat, the Atlanta Hawks, the Chicago Bulls, the Hornets goers. Everybody's just kind of in flux. You're really just competing with the 2 teams left in the Eastern Conference, whatever comes back in the Cleveland Cavaliers, the corpse of the Milwaukee Bucks, and now the upstart Detroit Pistons. So 76ers fans were down bad all year long, the butt at most jokes. We got good news here. You got the 3rd overall pick. You do have some cap flexibility or roster flexibility. And by all means, Paul George, welcome back to the podcasting community. Hope you enjoyed the 76ers breakdown. We'll be back doing a lot of these types of videos for a lot of other teams as we get deeper into the offseason. Here's just a little taste. But do me a favor, before you get on out of here, hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to hit the notification bell as well, so you know the next time we're dropping that sweet, sweet content. Thanks for watching.